Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. Chapter 1. The leather-bound volume was nothing remarkable. To an ordinary historian, it would have looked no different from hundreds of other manuscripts in Oxford's Bodleian Library, ancient and worn. But I knew there was something odd about it from the moment I collected it. Duke Humphrey's reading room was deserted on this late September afternoon, and requests for library materials were filled quickly now that the summer crush of visiting scholars was over and the madness of the fall term had not yet begun. Even so, I was surprised when Sean stopped me at the call desk. "Dr. Bishop, your manuscripts are up," he whispered, voice tingled with a touch of mischief. The front of his argyle sweater was streaked with the rusty traces of old leather bindings, and he brushed at it self-consciously. A lock of sandy hair tumbled over his forehead when he did. "Thanks," I said, flashing him a grateful smile. I was flagrantly disregarding the rules, limiting the number of books a scholar could call in a single day. Sean, who shared many a drink with me in the pink stuccoed pub across the street in our graduate student days, had been filling my request without complaint for more than a week. "And stop calling me Dr. Bishop. I always think you're talking to someone else." He grinned back and slid the manuscripts, all containing fine examples of alchemical illustrations from the Bodleian's collections, over his battered oak desk, each one tucked into a protective gray cardboard box. "Oh, there's one more." Shan disappeared into the cage for a moment and returned with a thick, quarto-sized manuscript bound simply in molted calfskin. He laid it on top of the pile and stopped to inspect it. The thin gold rims of his glasses sparkled in the dim light provided by the old bronze reading lamp that was attached to a shelf. "This one's not been called up for a while. I'll make a note that it needs to be boxed after you return it." "Do you want me to remind you?" "No, I already made note here." Sean tapped his head with his fingertips. Your mind must be better organized than mine." My smile widened. Sean looked at me shyly and tugged on the call slip, but it remained where it was, lodged between the cover of the first pages. "This one doesn't want to let go," he commented. Muffled voices chattered in my ear, intruding on the familiar hush of the room. "Did you hear that?" I looked around, puzzled by the strange sounds. "What?" Shan replied, looking up from the manuscript. Traces of a gilt shone along its edges and caught my eye, but those faded touches of gold could not account for a faint, iridescent shimmer that seemed to be escaping from between the pages. I blinked. "Nothing." I hastily drew the manuscript towards me, my skin prickling when it made contact with the leather. Shan's fingers were still holding the call slip, and now it slid easily under the binding's grasp. It hoisted the volumes into my arms and tucked them under my chin, assailed by a whiff of the uncanny that drove away the library's familiar smell of pencil shavings and floor wax. "Diana, are you okay?" Shan asked with a concerned frown. "Fine, just a bit tired," I replied, lowering the books away from my nose. I walked quickly through the original 15th century part of the library, past the rows of Elizabethan reading desks with their 3 ascending bookshelves and scarred writing surfaces. Between them, Gothic windows directed the reader's attention up to the coffered ceilings, where bright paint and gilding picked out the details of the university's crest of 3 crowns, an open book where its motto, "God is my illumination," was proclaimed repeatedly from high. Another American academic, Gillian Chamberlain, was my sole companion in the library on this Friday night. A classicist who taught at Bryn Mawr, Gillian spent her time poring over scraps of papyrus sandwiched between sheets of glass. I sped past her trying to avoid eye contact, but the creaking of the old floor gave me away. My skin tingled as it always did when another witch looked at me.